a Thursday. So pleased to be here with you and your faith, along with Rabbi Louis Civic, Chaplain Paul Fulmer of Lebanon Valley College, and pleased to introduce from Harrisburg University, Professor of International Affairs and Business and the Coordinator of General Education, Dr. Mehdi Noorbaksh.
Very good.
Did I say that right?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm pleased to know that. And good morning, Doctor. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Very good. Why don't you, we always like when our guests sort of give us a thumbnail biography of themselves so everybody knows who you are and where you come from.
I came to this country in 1974 to finish my engineering and go back. I finished my engineering. Then I changed my major. I went to international affairs. Then finished my education in University of Texas at Austin. Then I went to Harvard for postdoc. Then let's make the story short. Then we loved this area because my brother-in-law was living in Harrisburg. We came over here. We looked at this area and we said we have to move to Harrisburg.
Wonderful.
And we did it. We did it. My wife is a physician at the moment, is working with Pinnacle Health. The kids are very busy with the school, and I'm over here. I'm at Harrisburg University of Science and Technology. Yes.
How many children do you have?
We have 3 children. 2 of them are in Texas. One of them is finishing the medical school this coming May.
Wow.
They're all of them in the tradition
Terrific.
of the mom. The second one is entering the medical school, and the third one, the daughter, is going to Duke University for nursing and Master of Nursing this coming January. All of them are into healthcare.
Wow.
Terrific.
We love it. We love it. That's very good. It's a noble profession.
And what good are you, right?
just a mere academic.
No, we try. Yeah.
And how about your faith background? What do you tell us about that?
I was, I'm as you know, I'm a Muslim, but very much I call myself internationalist. Internationalist in the sense that I see in every religion positive things. And I was teaching in Houston a comparative religion course, but not to compare religions, but to explain, especially the Abrahamic religions, the 3 of them, Christianity, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They have a lot to share, and this was the way, not to say what this religion doesn't have and the other won't have, but to look at the positive aspects of all of those religions and the contribution to the human civilization, as all of them had. And overall, I don't know if you know it or not, in Islam there are 5 prophets that are very much cherished, and Jesus and Moses are of course 2 of them. The Muslims have the same respect that they have for Muhammad, similar to Jesus and Moses. There is no difference in that sense. Then that is the angle that I look at religion, and this is overall what I taught during the years. And when you look at my student, believe me, perhaps that is me, the same as you were teaching also.
Yeah.
I look at them as my kids. This is the way I am, and religion comes second. You know what I'm talking about. Second in the sense that it should not, of course, gives us any incentive to differentiate between this person or the other person. You have to go for the good that humanity is doing. This is my philosophy, and perhaps this is my philosophy. That's
Now,
who I am. Yeah.
You've come to the right radio show.
So, thank you. Appreciate it. I have a lot of. Let me tell you this. I have a lot of Jewish friends. I have a lot of Christian friends, and in the city of Houston, I was very, very active in the interfaith dialogue. And one more time, not to compare anything, because as I said, all of these religions are great, and you don't have anything to compare in that sense, but to just get something from these great traditions and build the humanity and the friendship. This is overall my approach.
Now, what country do you come from?
I'm coming from Iran myself.
Okay, that's right. You did
I'm
say
coming
that.
from Iran. Yeah,
Oh, you
I'm
did
coming
say
from
that.
Iran. Yes.
Yeah, so would you consider that a relatively progressive approach to Islam? How do you describe yourself in terms of the, perspective of...
In the world of Islam at the moment, in my writing, I differentiate between 2 spectrums of Islam, the same as any other religions. And between the 2, of course, you have a lot to cover. There is one Islam that I call it reformist Islam, and I put myself in that category. This is Islam that is absolutely compatible with democracy. Democratic value is very much friendly to the West, looking at technology and all of those things. And you have on the other side, you have the puritanical Islam, in my understanding.
So reformist and puritanical.
To a spectrum. Khomeini in Iran, Qutb in Egypt, these are on the puritanical side. Maududi, for example, in Pakistan, if you go back. And these guys, ISIS and those guys, of course, are a fringe, but very much are over that side, if we can put them, of course, in any category. In every country of the Middle East that you go at the moment, you see a battle between these two orientations. And in Turkey, you see it. In Iran, many people think the battle is political, but it is more than political. In Iran, it is a huge ideological battle between two readings of religion. One reading of religion is very much for autocratic orientation. The other one, of course, is for the democracy and human values in that regard. And the good things about Iran is this, that the cleric are divided on both sides. It's not something that you see when you see the clerics say the clerics are all of them over that side. No, and that is a huge chance for the Iranian to build the country, and I'm very optimistic about my country, because not only the younger generation are very much close to that reformist Islam, but a lot of cleric in Iran very much are battling against the establishment.
Is the establishment more obviously puritanical?
Absolutely, totally. They are alien to the concepts of democracy, alien, of course, to human rights, those issues, and we see it. We see it, of course, in Iran. We see it in some other countries of the Middle East. But overall, as I said, this is a battle at the moment, and in the West, we don't look at that battle in the Islamic world, and sometimes when a bomb goes off, we say what happened. And yes, there is for example, in the last couple of days, perhaps the best example in this regard is Pakistan, and the Taliban and killing 100 something children in that country.
Yeah.
Yes, and you see the people are up.
Peshawar, was it Peshawar?
Peshawar, yeah. The people are up. The people are absolutely against that kind of brutality. And this is a threshold, perhaps, for the first time in the political history of Pakistan, modern history, that they really become serious about Taliban. And from the same land is coming Malala, that 16 years old.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking?
Yes.
These are the true orientations that, of course, you see. And that 16 years old is very much well known in the world for the right of education for everyone.
Oh my goodness, the media went right to her for comment after the attack.
Absolutely. And as she got the Nobel Prize.
Right.
And very eloquent. And as I said, this is the other side of the Islam that we see in the Middle East at the moment. And not only in that person, but all over the Middle East at the moment. You see these two tendencies that are battling each other.
It must be difficult for you, because here in the West, you're absolutely right. Westerners, Americans, the British, maybe, they only see the puritanical side. And so, unfortunately, many of our citizens here in this country have come to view Islam as nothing but a violent religion. And they have, as many people do, anti-abortion people, anti-gay people do with biblical passages, they take out certain passages of the Quran and then want to say that proves that Islam is nothing but a terroristic religion.
You know that Muslims are 1.6 billion in terms of the population, second largest religion, of course, after Christianity, and only less than 400 million are living in the Middle East. And all of the trouble that you see is coming from that part of the world. And of course, if we have time later on, we go through it. Much of it is political. It doesn't have any. For example, recently you see the conflict between Shiite and Sunni, two sects in Islam. We didn't have this problem, for example, 5 years ago. Yes, of course, in some countries, minor things, but to the extent that we see it in the Middle East at the moment now. But on the side of Sunnis is Saudi Arabia, on the side of Shiite, of course, are Iran. And these two countries, they are in the midst of a reshuffling, power struggle in the Middle East. And they are using religion, of course, for that purpose. And this is what we see. This is what we see. The Arab Spring perhaps, showed. I'm not, talking about, which one, of course. We had, success stories and we had, failure. But Arab Spring showed that people in the Middle East, and believe me, if you go to the root of the Arab Spring in these 4 countries, poll after poll show that even in the most conservative society, like in Saudi Arabia, 65%, this is a minimum, are for democracy. You go to Egypt, that goes to about 90-something percent. You know that one of the success stories from the Arab Spring is, of course, Tunisia. Tunisia is doing a very good job. The establishments, the Islamists, came out of power because they came to the conclusion that they have to build more consensus. They don't want to, impose themselves over the politics of Tunisia. The country is doing very well. In Egypt, totally different story. In Libya, totally different story because, of course, in Libya, a dictator was living in that country or dominating the politics of that country for 4 decades. And overnight, you cannot establish democracy in a country that is tribal, in a country that you have a lot of forces. In Syria, of course, you have a dictator who has been over there for many, many years. And unfortunately, he has the support of Iran. He has the support of course, Russia, and very much butchered, over 100,000 people.
So are you saying then Tunisia, in our Western construct of a free or a democratic society, is in fact?
Yes, absolutely. In the last couple of years, as I said, they have a long way to go. But in terms of respecting democratic norms, I mean, voting, coming to power through, of course, election, respecting the opponent, and establishing democratic norms, absolutely, that is the case.
And so what was it that was different about Tunisia and what happened there as people slowed down?
Well, I'll tell you what, Doctor, if you could hold on for 1 second. Let's take a quick time out. Dr. Mehdi Noorbaksh is here from Harrisburg University. Your call's certainly welcome. Wonderful that we have such an excerpt here to answer questions and to clarify things for so many of my listeners here. 273-1270, 1-800-334-1270. The phone numbers for you. Let's go ahead and take care of AccuWeather. That's up in 30 seconds.
We're more than just a place to buy gas. We can keep your car running right. We're Leffler Service. We can service whatever you drive.
Don't forget to check your inspection stickers because numbers 12, 1, and 2 are now due. And don't forget to make sure your vehicle is prepared to handle life's little surprises with Leffler Service Center, 9th and Maple Streets, Lebanon.
Leffler Service. We put the service back in service station.
AccuWeather's exclusive Lebanon area forecast. Clouds and a few intervals of sun today. Breezy and colder than yesterday, high 39. Mostly cloudy and cold tonight, though 28. For tomorrow, times of clouds and sun with a high around 40. And for Saturday, more clouds and sun and cold, high 37. Reporting for WLBR, this is AccuWeather meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Thank you, Joe. Clouds in the sky holding steady at 32 degrees here at 1270 WLBR. As we continue on, you and your faith here, your call's welcome. Okay, we had to pause for the cause there, as they say in radio.
Yeah, it sounded like we were speaking of Tunisia as a positive example, and so I just want to hear more about that.
The difference between Tunisia, for example, and Egypt, Libya and Syria, of course, in Libya you had a tribal society, 40 years of dictatorship, and Gaddafi did not allow any representation of even in a small civil society to take place. In Egypt, that was dominated by, of course, Mubarak. But in Tunisia, Bourguiba and the dictatorial authoritarian regime of Bourguiba could not eliminate civil society. And the workers' union in that country from the beginning, from the time of independence, they were very, very strong. And during these years, and after the Arab Spring, they became, of course, a huge player in that country. People were trusting them. and that is what it is. They knew each other, and there is, of course, a concept in political science is calling it, of course, politicization of a society. It means before, of course, you come to a revolution or you come to, of course, to change. Before that, you have to know your opponent. Before that, you have to communicate with people in the society. That is exactly the example of Tunisia. The Islamists were working and talking with seculars. They knew each other. They knew each other's, opinion and ideas and idealism about, of course, government and so on. And then after, of course, the Arab Spring, they were very much close to each other in terms of, communication. They didn't have to start communication. They were, of course, in that course for many, many years. And that is a difference. But in Egypt, for example, the closeness, unfortunately, the mistrust between the Islamists and the seculars was so huge that the seculars, unfortunately, gave it to the military. And, of course, Islamists made, of course, a huge mistake in Egypt, in my understanding. They should have not, come to power after, of course, the Arab Spring. They should have, waited, in that country to build consensus. That was, of course, their mistake.
Yeah, well, everyone's in a hurry to get to the top.
Absolutely.
But what you were saying was very interesting, because I was reading in the Independent, an Irish newspaper, about Patrick, I forget his last name, maybe McGrady, who's going to the Middle East to work on peace in Gaza. And he said exactly the same thing you did. Everybody's talking to him, how do you expect a peace and, return to the negotiation? He said, no, I expect to get to know the people and find out about them, and they find about me, and then it'll take years, and then we'll learn to trust each other and have a working relationship. And then if I say something, I'm more likely to be listened to.
But then who runs the government in the interim?
Well, that's the bad part from an American perspective. But I think one of the bad things about us as Americans is that we want things done in the length of a television program or a mini-series, at best. And we haven't got the notion that history takes hundreds, if not thousands of years to process stuff. So just because peace isn't breaking out all over doesn't mean there aren't people that are interested in peace.
Well, I think to your point, it goes to our American Revolution, where we had the revolution, we fought the war, we toppled the king, we got rid of all the British, we put in George Washington, and away we went.
Yes, but that's what one might call a reform and not a revolution. A revolution would have been taking boats over to England and putting the king out.
Yeah. In this country. But there is something else about Middle East that we must know. Most of the countries in the Middle East, except a couple of them, Iran is one of them, they were colonized, and they gained independence after World War II. Then in that sense, there are new states. And as soon as, of course, you have those states, then very much you have the Cold War. And in the Cold War, United States and the European countries, they were very much hesitant to change anything in the Middle East, because always there was a suspicious that any change in the Middle East is instigated by the Soviets. In my country in 1953, and you know that story, there was a prime minister, democratically elected in Iran, went to the parliament, nationalized the Iranian oil industry, and the British sold, that package to the Americans, that we have to topple that regime because he nationalized the Iranian oil industry. And many intellectuals in Iran, they are very critical still of the United States and that move, and they argue if Mossadegh would have allowed to stay in power, perhaps we didn't need, the Iranian Revolution, and totally the story was a different story. Then this is one, of course, aspects of the Middle East, that these countries, of course, are new. And unfortunately, we supported authoritarian regimes in that part of the world because of the Cold War and, other things. And the other is the establishment of the State of Israel. I'm not talking about the problem with that. I'm talking about the conflict between the Israel and, of course, the Arabs from 1948. And as you know, that is continuous. And that is a pressure on the Middle East. That is, something, of course, that you have to take into consideration. And these are the two things that we have. Of course, we have to think about it. And with the authoritarianism, of course, comes. And overall, this is my understanding. Radicalism in the Middle East has, two sources. Number one is the unsettled Arab-Israeli, of course, conflict. And the other one, of course, authoritarianism. And I go through it, of course, in papers and writing, that authoritarianism in the Middle East is not just only a political system, but is a system of discrimination in terms of course, resources, in terms of, economy, in terms of course, who gets, what in those, societies.
Sure.
And after a while, of course, if you are deprived of the resources, you radicalize the society. And some, of course, pick up arms, some, other things. And as I said, this is a source. And in my understanding, when we go to American foreign policy, this is the first time in the Middle East that America and the Western countries, they must become very serious about the process of the democratization in that country, in that region, because that is not. We cannot have. This is a time that changing that the political map of those countries in the Middle East is very critical to eliminate, of course, radicalism. And I know it is very difficult in Saudi Arabia to talk about democracy, but at least political participation can be, of course, the first step to recognize the right of the minorities. For example, in Bahrain, the right of the majority, or for example, in some other countries, political participation. That right has to be recognized. And in my understanding, this has to be, of course, the focal point in American foreign policy and the Western policy, that this is absolutely necessary at the moment to change the Middle East, to encourage Middle Eastern countries to change their behavior.
But doesn't that require, and we're just about at our bottom of the hour news break, but doesn't that require oftentimes America to back some of the revolutionaries or some of the groups that are not in the government power?
The reformist forces. Yeah, you have to look at those forces and see who is really pushing for democracy and human rights in what country of the Middle East.
Okay.
And those need, of course, your moral encouragement and support and so many other things.
All right. We are just about at the bottom of the hour. Our news break is straight ahead. We'll get you AccuWeather on the backside of the news, but it's you and your faith. Our fascinating guest here with us will continue on after the bottom of the hour.
All right,
break.
Dave, thank you.
Dave's back at the top of the hour with another WLBR news update. It is you and your faith for this month of December, and we'll get right back to our conversation, but AccuWeather is ahead for you in half a minute.
'Twas weeks into the season, the weather quite cold. Mama and I noticed our furnace was old. It clanked and it clattered and it wasn't quite heating. We knew through the years that it took quite a beating. A new gas furnace would be such a thrill to keep us cozy and warm with a low energy bill.
Blauk Fuel now offers winter tune-ups and new installations of gas heating equipment. Call 273-7677 today or visit blaukfuel.com, PA 4931.
AccuWeather's exclusive Lebanon area forecast. Clouds and a few intervals of sun today. Breezy and colder than yesterday, high 39. Mostly cloudy and cold tonight, though 28. For tomorrow, times of clouds and sun with a high around 40. And for Saturday, more clouds and sun and cold, high 37. Reporting for WLBR, this is AccuWeather meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
And right now we have clouds in the sky, 32 degrees here at 1270 WLBR. It is you and your faith, along with Rabbi Louis Civic and Chaplain Paul Fulmer and our guest professor, Dr. Mehdi Noorbaksh of Harrisburg University of Science and Technology, professor of International Affairs and Business, and coordinator of general education there. How many students are at Harrisburg U?
Undergrad, we have 500. Grad, we have close to about 700.
Really?
Yeah.
My goodness, I didn't
we have
realize
a lot
that.
we have a lot. And a school, as you know, is built for 2,500, and we are new. We are feeling it gradually.
It's a commuter school, or do you have residential?
Oh, we have residential. We have 2 dorms at the moment in the middle of downtown. No, we are. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and we have students from different parts of the country. Of course, not very south, But we have from New York, we have from Maryland, we have from New Jersey, and
How many different degree offerings are there?
we are giving 4 master's degree and close to about 12 undergrads. Yeah,
Very
12
good.
undergrads, bachelor's degree. Our computer science is very strong. Analytic is very strong. On the other side, pre-med is strong. Forensic is strong.
That's right. I did hear that. Yes,
absolutely,
yes.
yeah.
They're forensic sciences.
One of the things about, of course, this institution, we are very connected to the industry in this part of course, Pennsylvania. We are very close to Highmark. We are very close to a lot of other institutions. And the rate of hiring employment in our school is over 90%.
Terrific.
Because we are connected to those industries. They go for internship. And in that sense, we are very, very lucky.
You're going to give LVC a run for their money.
Keep us on our toes. That's good. That's good. Competition's good.
It's so American.
Now, do they offer any degrees? Are your classes more of elective classes?
No.
Do you have some
mine,
degrees?
Mine, of course, the general education, there are 30 hours that they have to take, all of the students. This is our promise to the students that they take 120 credit hours and they graduate. We don't go more, we don't go less. From the beginning, we set it up, that way because we don't want them to spend, too much money on education, especially now that it's very expensive. 30 of them are general education. And our gen are very different from the other institution. For example, the course that I taught this semester is on leadership, organizational theory, and micro. The 3 of them combine together in a 6-hour course. And the students, they have undergraduate student, they have to establish a company by themselves. They have to go through the company at the end of the semester. They have to write a report about a real company. Very practical type of knowledge that they need. And, and in that sense,
there used to be an organization for young kids and teenagers to do that. It was Junior Achievement.
Yeah, still around.
Junior Achievement. That's kind of what it sounds like.
Another course, for example, that I'm teaching next semester is a Civic Mind course. American history after the Civil War.
Taught by an Iranian.
American give
Amen.
I love it. Believe me, I love it.
Really?
I love it. I go to American history and believe me, I
Who's your favorite
look at
patriot?
the founders.
Don't answer.
No, believe me, the founders, all of them, they have amazing outlooks. Of course, I liked George Washington a lot. Later on, Abraham Lincoln. Through the transformation that he went.
Sure.
Of course, as he was not against slavery at the beginning, and later on, the man was absolutely.
All he wanted was the Union to stay together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, whatever that took.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to compromise between the Union to stay together and become anti-slavery at that time, in my understanding, was a miracle that he did it, and I liked that man.
So did you see the movie Lincoln?
Yes.
Now, do you think that from your reading of history, is that
it's about the assassination
credible...
mostly? Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's about the passage of the 13th Amendment.
I know. But the man is an amazing man in American history, and as I said, when I look at him from the transformation point of view, that a person can change that much for the good of the country and for the good of the people. This is the most important thing.
Yes, he had a higher purpose.
Absolutely.
And I think if we could do one thing in the world, it would be to fill people with that sense of higher purpose again, to look beyond themselves and their own
interest.
Country. Yes,
absolutely.
Their own interest.
Well,
that's a good way of saying.
And as we sit here in our December edition of You and Your Faith, I think that is one of the core tenets of most of your faith traditions.
Absolutely.
Is to love your brother as yourself, and to see more than just your own self gratification everything.
From the founders, of course, I like George Washington. Jefferson for me is another character. I liked that man a lot. I like all of them, but believe me, Jefferson for me is something else.
Well, who among the Middle Eastern great political leaders would be the Abraham Lincoln, of Iran, or the Abraham Lincoln of the Middle East?
None. We will not. But of course, in that part of the world, you have Gandhi, from of course, India. In Pakistan, you have, for example, Iqbal. He was, of course, a huge, philosopher, in that country. In my own country, after the Iranian Revolution, there was a prime minister, Bazagan. Perhaps you heard, his name.
Say that name again.
Bazagan. Yeah, he was an amazing, of course, person, and he resigned as a protest to the hostage taking in Iran. And he announced that is against, of course, ethics. It's against the international law, and it is against, of course, the interest of course, my country.
Was he viewed as pro-Shah?
No. Mossadegh under the Shah was in jail for 10 years. He was Bazagan. He was a supporter of Mossadegh, that prime minister, in 1953. Under Mossadegh, he became the person who took over the oil industry in Iran as an engineer. He was educated in France. He came back to the country very much, of course, political, but reformist, on the reformist side. And he was teaching at the University of Tehran. And as he, of course, grew opposition to the Shah, he was expelled out of the university. And he remained as a central figure in the Iranian reformist, of course, movement, both in terms of Islam, because he was also we call them in Iran, of course, religious nationalists, those who combined the two together and very much stood behind Mossadegh, and later on, of course, for reform in Iran. Then, in my country, of course, he is very much cherished and respected. Yeah, respected.
Now, Iran, as I understand it from school, very proud as Persians. They are not Arabs. They are Persians.
They are Aryans in terms of course, the race, and Iranians are in terms of we call it intellectual, capital in the Middle East compared to the rest of the Middle East. Iranians have done a good job. Very different, very innovative. A lot of students from Iran are coming to the U.S. for the PhDs. You know that there are 5 top universities in Iran that, according to Harvard and Princeton and those institutions, their undergrad are the best. Not one of the best, the best. And a lot of the students every year, of course, come to the United States and European countries to get their PhDs, mostly in the technical fields. Yeah, they have done a good job, in that sense. Very much industrious, the people. And they did not give a chance to the current government to establish a totalitarian regime in that country, because civil society in that country is suppressed, but very much is not eliminated. They go to jail, they come back, they're students and the reformers, and they began, of course, to fight. And the current, of course, government, I'm talking about Rouhani, the current president, was really a compromise between the moderate conservatives and the reformists. They elected him, and it shocked, of course, the ultra-conservatives in Iran. And he's, of course, not the ideal, of course, to my standard, but he's doing a good job. And he had our support, he had my support, and I'm supporting him at the moment. He's really moving, the country very much.
So do these students who come over here for their PhDs, do they come with the intention of then going back to Iran, or are they looking to go elsewhere?
From the latest statistics that I have, half of them stay, half of them go back. But that's good. That's very good. And the good thing, of course, under the Bush administration, we didn't give that much of a chance to the Iranian students. Under the Obama, we are. And I think, in my understanding, that is the best thing. When the students come over here, the younger generation, they are exposed to the society. They are exposed to the norms. And they believe me, I haven't seen any Iranian coming to this country doesn't like the American people. That is beyond, anything that you can imagine. And when they go back to Iran, when they go back anywhere, then they are very much promoting, what I'm talking about, promoting, this country.
Right, but that's the problem. If they don't go back, how are those seeds going to be planted to continue to blossom in Iran?
They are, in Iran, as I said, when they go back, they really keep in touch with the connections that they have established in this country in academia, in other places. Iranian in the last couple of years, I'm talking about the universities, in the Middle East, perhaps compared to another countries, of course, in the Middle East, they published more than any other country in the American and European journals in the technical fields. I'm talking about in English language. And this is very much through the connection that they have established in this country. And that is very positive. And in this country also, for your information, we have close to about 1 million Iranians are living in the United States. And the majority of them came to this country because of education. And if you go to any Iranian family at the moment, education for their kids is number one. And you see a lot of lawyers, and you see a lot of physicians. You see
Scientists.
a lot of educators, scientists. For example, in NASA, you see a lot of Iranians in other places. And they are into businesses too. Of course, when you go to California, they are in real estate and a lot of other things.
No.
Los Angeles, California, Iranians, close to about 500,000 Iranians are living in California.
Wow.
They dominate the real estate.
On Bravo, they have a channel. They have a show called The Shahs of
The
Sunset.
Shahs of Sunset. We have an Iranian. We've had Iranian
That
students.
show is not a good representation, but overall,
bring it up.
They love America.
that's okay.
They
You're
love
absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Iranian students at LBC were interested in starting a Zoroastrian group. We just didn't have enough. Is there much Zoroastrianism remaining in Iran?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
What is that?
Zoroastrian is an ancient religion that, according to the Iranians and others, is a very, very nice attitude toward. It's the same as Buddhism and others, of course. And yes, that is one of the
It
ancient
has a scripture. What's the name of the scripture?
Ahura Mazda.
Mazda is a god
that's the god.
That's the
Okay,
god.
sorry.
Yeah.
The books, believe me, I don't have the. I know the names, but I don't want to pronounce it.
Is it when you say Zoroaster? It sounds like is it astrology or is it?
No,
It's
no,
just
no. Very ancient religion, and
It's
the
a
people.
dualism.
Yeah,
The
dualism.
battle between light and dark.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh.
A Veda? No, not the
No,
Vedas, but-
Aveda goes to the Buddhism and
Yeah,
Buddhism
no,
and
but
things.
it's
Yeah.
like
But it's an ancient religion.
Avesta.
They are in Iran, they are in Pakistan, they are in India, and very much nice people. Believe in nice people.
When you said earlier, Dr. Noorbaksh, that America oftentimes, particularly in the era of the Cold War, was looking for stability because they were afraid that any revolution was going to be a foothold for the Soviets. America's been criticized a lot for being for backing the Shah. And then of course you look at Iraq, and for a time we backed Saddam Hussein. And that was all part of I think what you're referring to about that stability. We were looking for stability to not give the Soviets.
And we're looking for oil. We don't I think very much or enough about the amount of influence the oil companies and the notion of having oil has in American diplomacy and how it shaped Middle East diplomacy. I won't buy Mobil gasoline because they're at Mobil, Exxon, they're like the most corrupt in terms of peddling American influence falsely. They create situations. It's not a good thing. So, let's say that we have a president that wants to make friends with Saudi Arabia, and they say, oh, that'll be really cool. We can be in charge of our own oil wells. What do you think the oil companies are going to say to the president and the PACs that represent money to the people that run for office? What are they going to say? And so we tend to look at this as it's a Middle Eastern thing, but it's a Middle Eastern thing influenced by American oil companies.
You're absolutely right.
And it's so nuts for us to say. I mean, I understand pipelines don't look pretty, but it would give control of gas and oil back to the United States, and the whole shape of the world could be different.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Authoritarianism in that part of the world was supported because they wanted a stability, and as you said it, stability meant, of course, the free flow of oil. And let me tell you, something also else in that, context. Middle Eastern oil from the beginning was very, very cheap. And many argue, and believe me, there are a lot of research about that price and how Middle Eastern oil contributed to the industrialization in the West. I'm talking about American, of course, Europeans. Because of the cheapness of the oil, they benefited a lot, of course, from oil. Recently, I've seen a book. I don't know if you have seen it or you heard about it or not. There is the same argument about I don't say, African American. I don't like, that term, Black Americans. Because when you say African American, it means that, they are African, first. Yeah. They are American, Black American. And my students know from the beginning that I don't use it in that concept, African American. I use it in a Black American. That there is an argument that Black Americans also contributed enormously to the economy of the United States from the beginning.
Yeah,
certainly.
It is not only slavery was very much an institution which economically benefited, of course, the industrialization of this country. And we have to take into account that when blacks are talking about, that history, I don't want to, I'm not arguing about compensation and those things, but we owe them something. This is overall, my point, that these guys really, when you go back to the history of slavery, you see how much they contributed to, of course, to this country.
So you're saying the Middle East, in a parallel way, contributed to this country
that is
because
exactly.
the oil was so cheap.
I was of course reading about that history, and then recently, 2-3 months ago, there is a person who wrote a book in that context, and I'm reading that book at the moment. I forgot the name, to compare, of course, these contributions, in that sense. It's amazing.
But it is
industrializations, and of course the contribution of a group of people.
But it is a double-edged sword for American diplomacy, because the term "the Great Satan" comes from Iran during the Iranian Revolution. Because we were perceived by the revolutionaries to be supporting this, evil Shah and his regime, which is true, but was done for the stability purposes. And so, how will the reformists in Iran, for example, inform some of those old school people that still think of America as the Great Satan for aligning with the Shah?
The history is history. And the Iranian reformers and those who want to establish at the moment, including Rouhani, a good relationship with the United States, and that is a majority in Iran at the moment, that they want to have a relationship with the United States for various reasons. Technology, education, and very much from the beginning. I don't know, you heard perhaps, thousands of stories that when Americans go to Iran, they are received very well by the Iranian people. Part of it, of course, is culture. The other side, Iranian overall cherish American for their achievement. Besides the question of course, politics, that they are hurt in that, that area. But overall, that great Satan of those things, that was the terminology that Khomeini started in Iran. It is gone for the majority of the Iranian. And Rouhani at the moment is very much pushing to establish that relationship as soon as, of course, possible. And even of course, there is a talk to, that Iranian, the Iranian airline Homa was coming to New York and going to Iran directly. One of the things that Rouhani proposed now is, to establish that route, one more time, because they want to have, that relationship. And as I said, among the Iranians, the majority that are well educated and very much on that side of the reformist Islam, believe me, for them, these issues are mostly political, and they want to have a good relationship, of course, with the United States and in Europe. Of course, there is always a question and the tension, of course, of the conflict between, of course, Israel, in the Middle East. That is, of course, something else. But in terms of having a relationship with the United States, there is no question. And as I said, that terminology is gone.
Okay.
That terminology is not, something that anybody, of course, thinking about it that way.
All right, we're just about at the top of the hour. Our You and Your Faith segment continues after our top of the hour news break. Straight ahead.
A big 4-hour furniture sale is taking place this Sunday at Bob Hoke's Home Furnishings in Lebanon.
And we continue on. It's You and Your Faith for this month of December. Fascinating journey that we have had so far with Dr. Mehdi Noorbaksh.
Oh, thank you.
Love the name.
Yeah.
Noorbaksh.
It's a long name.
No, it's good. PhD, MHA, MBA. It's a shame you couldn't get schooling down with. I'm just kidding. All your advanced degrees.
when I was in 40s, I was teaching and I was going to a school.
I'm sorry, when what?
40.
Oh.
40. Yeah.
Well,
continuous education, let's put it this way. I love it. Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things I think we can all agree. A lot of the foreign cultures, be it Chinese or Arab nations, they have such a love of education, and so it is not unusual that most of our doctors, or a good many of our doctors, are either of Indian descent or Iranian or Arab.
Yeah.
Why doesn't America have that same? I mean, some families certainly do.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
can't generalize that much, but as a culture, I don't know that we have that same esteem for education the way other cultures do.
Dr. Vollmer knows that when you go to any graduate school in this country, the latest number that I have seen, close about between 65 to 70s in the graduate schools, there are foreigners.
Right.
International students,
International students. And that's not good. That's not good. Believe me, in my school, I always push students to sacrifice a little bit more. Get yourself educated. Don't think about a fast way of just get a bachelor degree,
Get 'em and make money.
and just make money.
But that's
Forget about that. Just wait. Do you know
we
what
have
I'm
a
talking about?
different cultural ideation here, and that's why we don't have that respect for education. Look at how people talk about teachers. Look at how they denigrate them constantly when it comes to giving them a raise or something. They don't work, they don't do this, they don't do that. But they're in other places, teachers are actually respected.
Well, but that's a misnomer, because the fact of the matter is that if you go to any school board meeting in this area alone, most of the teachers, entry-level teachers, make far more walking in the door right out of college to their first classroom than the private sector.
Fine. They deserve it.
But so this idea that they're not paid well and they're not appreciated is not.
Compared to other cultures, they're not. They're paid well for here doing what they do. But
Especially European countries.
Yes, European
Especially
countries. And they have laws in European countries. Guess what? If you insult a teacher in a European country, you can go to jail. Here you get sued. The teacher gets sued because she made the kid call her a nasty name. It's like, duh.
Well, maybe we should just round people up and put them in jail for their free speech.
I don't know, but I think there's a question of respect involved.
I agree. I think some of that is brought on by the teachers' union, always with their sob song that they're so overworked. That a teacher actually has to do work at home. Can you imagine that? No other profession ever has to take some of their work home and do work at home.
No.
But let me tell you something about the union. Do you know which country in Europe has the most of the unions and has the most sophisticated economy?
Iran.
No, I mean Europe. In Europe. No, Germany.
Really?
Germany. As you know, Germany in Europe. Germany has of course the most of the industry. Absolutely. What I'm saying in terms of the union.
Okay.
That country more than any other European country is unionized. But they know how to work with union. That's overall, my point. That unions are not necessarily bad, but of course, you have to have rules and regulations and all of those things. And believe me, in my courses that we go, of course, to those those topics sometimes, Germany is the best example in that regard. That they are very sophisticated economically, but at the same time, of course, the labor force in that country, 90-something%, of course, unionized.
Well, I think back to the original point that with America's zeal to make money, I think in some regards unions have also played into that they want, and because of the financial component, they have tried to exert their might sometimes to the detriment of the society, of the industry that they were representing.
I agree.
So
I totally agree. But overall, we know in this country we have problem in education.
I can't dispute
we
that.
We have problem in education, and in my understanding, teachers are not the problem. The problem is somebody.
I don't think so.
I'm not saying teachers are perfect, but the problem does not start from there. That's
I don't think people have a respect for education. They have a respect for money. Yeah. Some guy, if he won the lottery and couldn't spell his name, would be more respected than somebody with 100 degrees and lived under a bridge. It's just the way things are.
And I would befriend the guy who won the lottery. No.
Maybe some of it has to do with the interaction of religion and education. In Iran, is education largely religiously based?
No,
it's public.
No, it is not. It is public, and I don't know. Something happened, in that country that makes me very optimistic. Before the Iranian Revolution, close to about 10% of the females were entering the higher education. At the moment, it's 52 to 48.
Wow.
This is amazing. This is a revolution, by itself. And these things makes me, so optimistic about, that country. And we come from, that, part of the world. For example, in Iran, under the Shah, of course, the society was very much polarized. The Iranian did not appreciate music that much. But believe me, after the Iranian Revolution is amazing. In every single family, the traditional family, kids are going to a school to learn one instrument, and of course, the instrument, the classic instruments in the Arab world, oud and others, very much now famous in Iran. And as I said, in that country, a lot of things are taking place that makes you very optimistic.
Good.
And overall in the Middle East, I was in Turkey, and believe me, I was in Turkey close to about 15 years ago. And I went back 5 years ago, and even last year, the Turkey has changed tremendously. Those countries are changing so fast.
More democratic, more open,
in terms of
more
absolutely,
free.
Absolutely.
Construct of free. Yes.
As I said, they have their own problem too. But overall, that is the case. I was reading a couple of things, a couple of articles about something a couple of days ago about Africa. The way we look at Africa is changing tremendously. This is overall my argument, that we have to open up ourselves to the experiences of other people in other part of the world. Believe me, when we say Africa, for many of us, is a backward region of the world.
Sure.
This is not the case. This is not the case. You go back and see, for example, before Ebola, that they give you statistics. Sierra Leone, these countries were developing so fast and quickly. What I want to say overall, I don't want to open another discussion on Africa, but we have to open up to other part of the world, and part of it, of course, goes to our education. That after September 11, this is the first time that Americans are very much going to foreign sources to read about news. I don't want to say they do not trust, of course, the American sources, but they want to expose themselves to other sources. Absolutely,
and they should. But at the same time, it's hard to want to do that when the representatives of these sources sort of cut your head off for doing it. It's hard to keep a good head on your shoulders.
Yeah, and so I wonder. We think about Islam, and you were talking about the puritanical version. How is it that you open up people in that kind of a culture who are people perhaps involved in groups like ISIS? How can we all contribute to opening them up to the world and education?
ISIS is. Everywhere you go to the Middle East at the moment, ISIS is a terrorist organization. There is no doubt. There is no question, of course, about that. And for a lot of people, that is a political force. It doesn't have anything to do with Islam. And of course, justification is over there. But it. All of us are knowing that slavery in Islam absolutely is totally forbidden. And these guys, they have a pamphlet now on slavery.
Yeah, I read parts of it.
Sad,
yeah.
That's amazing. then it doesn't have anything to do with religion. You know what I'm talking about? These guys are coming from the Stone Ages. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
These guys are a bunch of
pagans who hide under the cover of religion.
The way they are reacting, the way they indiscriminating, they are killing Muslims, non-Muslims. This is a cult. This is, of course, a terrorist organization. And unfortunately, as a result, of course, a couple of things in the Middle East, they could gain power. But in my understanding, 2-3 years from now, ISIS will not be there. I don't have any doubt, of course, about
You don't think they'll exist, but they're making so much money. They're so wealthy and so powerful.
Yes, they made money, but that is not, of course, the case in the future. And in Iraq, they are taking back some territories from them. They are very much limiting them in terms of the resources that they were getting. And the countries, and something about ISIS. For the first time in the Middle East, a lot of people came to the conclusion, even people who were in the middle, that if you let any manifestation of faith to become radicalized, that is the result.
Unfortunately,
and that is a very, very good conclusion. And believe me, it's not my conclusion. I read it and I see it in the Middle East. Then there is an intention in the Middle East at the moment to very much de-radicalize, faith. And this is, I think, a good thing.
But we don't see, at least it seems as though, maybe those who are plugged in more to what's going on in those individual countries, but it doesn't seem as though the moderate, learned Islamic folks that in no way support ISIS or its actions are rising up and taking them down.
Because they are not taking arms. They the same as ISIS. I don't know if you saw a manifesto that came out close about a month and a half ago from close about 165 scholars from Al-Azhar University and others, and step by step condemned the ideology of ISIS. And for the Middle Eastern people, these things are very important. They don't show it perhaps that way, but this is an ideology, and this is overall what I want to say. That is a fringe in the society. It's a brutal type of an ideology. And you see the manifestation of opposition, like, for example, what took place in Pakistan at the moment. Millions of people were out in the last couple of nights with candle vigils and all of those against, of course, the Taliban. You know what I'm talking about? Then it takes, I don't want to say it takes some time to develop the opposition, but manifestation of opposition with a drastic type of criminal act that comes to the of course, to the surface. And in Pakistan, in part of Pakistan, they are very conservative. But the conservatives to come and condemn that act, that it doesn't have anything to do, of course, with religion and Islam. This is something, and I don't know if you know it or not. From the beginning, that Taliban was very much in Pakistan. Taliban is a byproduct of the foreign policy of Pakistan. And let me take you back to the history a little bit. It is very important. That Mujahideen, of course, fought the Soviets in Afghanistan.
Yes.
In the 1992, the last of the communist regime left Afghanistan, and the country, of course, went to civil war between 1992 and 1994. My criticism against, of course, the United States government at that time, Afghanistan was totally destroyed. United States in 1992 turned a blind eye on Afghanistan, which was in ruin. They came out. And then Taliban was made or created by Pakistan to stabilize Afghanistan. And for many years, we bought that idea that this is a stabilizing force. I'm talking about the United States. And as soon as Al-Qaeda, of course, put his nest in Afghanistan, we came to the conclusion that no, this is not a stabilizing force. This is a destabilizing, of course, force. Pakistan had made mistake. United States made, of course, mistake. And in the Middle East, countries that they wanted to take advantage of the situation was Saudi Arabia. Some of those traditional countries, they supported them, they recognized them. But not now all of them came to the conclusion, even the Saudis. Saudi Arabia was very much behind building the ISIS at the beginning. I'm talking about 2008, 2011. Al-Qaeda and ISIS at that time was not ISIS. That was Al-Qaeda in Iraq. It was totally weakened by the Americans and the Iraqis. Then in 2011, the civil war in Syria gave them that chance to go to Syria. And Saudi helped them. Saudi Arabia helped them because Saudi was against, of course, the government of Syria at that time. There is a criticism against, of course, the Obama administration that we ignored that situation. We should have stood behind the opposition in Syria. We ignored it. We neglected it. And then ISIS, of course, built up in Syria. Then they came back in 2014 to Iraq. And they did not come.
And we had drawn down our forces.
They did not come back alone. They established a type of alliances with the former Saddam Hussein's military, people who were outside, of course, the realm of the government. And much of their success, of course, is of course, owes to that support that they got inside Iraq. And a couple of the major cities was very much captured by ISIS. ISIS was not alone. ISIS at that time had close to about 8,000 to 9,000, of course, fighters. But they were supported by those, of course. And now those guys came to the conclusion that that alliance, that type of strategic alliance or whatever they want to call it, it didn't work out. And even in the tribal areas, they are getting a lot of opposition. I'm talking about the ISIS because these guys are brutal. These guys are totally a different, animal.
But when Taliban was building up in Afghanistan after the Soviet War, through Pakistan.
Through Pakistan.
And you're saying America supported that because it stabilized Afghanistan?
Pakistan and Saudi Arabia were behind the Taliban, and they sold that package to United States.
Right.
That this is a stabilizing force inside Afghanistan, and we should not
tinker with it.
Think about it.
Okay.
We should leave it alone.
But was the Taliban practicing their brutal techniques of stoning women that looked making
not
them
from the beginning, but we didn't care about that until Al-Qaeda, of course. The nest of Al-Qaeda was established in of course, Afghanistan, and we have September 11. Yeah.
That's when the Taliban...
That is the time that we, of course, we looked at Afghanistan, and we said, Taliban is the same as Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda is the same as Taliban. But before that, we did not really oppose that government. They were Taliban reps under the Clinton administration who came to Washington. They had relation. Of course, we didn't recognize the government. We did not. Because that government at that time was recognized by 3 countries, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Kuwait. United Arab Emirates, I'm sorry. No other country recognizing Taliban at that time. But we didn't mind because, of course...
You weren't causing trouble.
They did not cause any trouble
right.
for us. But as soon as Al-Qaeda, of course, came, and we had September 11, then we thought that we made a mistake. What I want to say, I don't want to blame everything on the United States, but what I want to say is that in that path, we made a lot of mistakes too. If the United States stayed in Afghanistan not as a military, of course, force, built Afghanistan after the ruin of the years of fighting, of course, communism in the Soviet Union, created incentive, economic incentive for the Afghans. It's a poor country. Perhaps we had, of course, a different Afghanistan.
But isn't Afghanistan also a country of tribes? Country of nomads?
Yes.
High illiteracy?
Yes. But we don't want to, of course, we don't want to establish a full-fledged democracy. But as you know, even in that country today, Afghans go to the poll and the government is elected freely. There is no question about this election. That was a free election. The previous election, a little bit of course, doubt here and there. But even in that country, when people are given a choice to choose their government, in whatever shape or manner we think about it, even in that poor country, people come to go. Ashraf Ghani is a leader, president at the moment in that country, freely elected. There is no question about that election, and that country, of course, with all of the trouble that the Afghans have, they cherish that institution.
Who was the leader before
Karzai?
Karzai.
Yeah.
Now,
Karzai is gone.
Karzai is gone.
Karzai gone. Yeah.
But am I correct? His brother is like one of the big heroin kings of the world.
Karzai's and those guys. They were some corruptions, of course,
sure.
With the government. He himself not, but definitely his relative.
He didn't ever seem like much of a friend of America.
But believe me now, with the new government and the type of coalition that we see in that government at the moment, Afghanistan has a chance. They need help. I'm not talking about military help. I'm talking about other kinds of help, and there is no question.
But are they now dominated by a society that has been so Talibanized, if you will, that the idea of girls going to school and education for all is still...
Believe me, under the Taliban also, you had secret schools. Under Taliban, you had people in Afghanistan, they did not allow Taliban to dominate everything. And as I said it, now the voting and the new president is a manifestation that the Afghans are very much for a different kind of government. Taliban is a very minority, but it's a brutal force. And many of those who joined Taliban, they joined Taliban because of the economic reasons. They are on the salary of Taliban. And we should have recognized it from the beginning that in that poor country, whomever has money can attract, of course. And as I said, we made a lot of mistakes. Under the Bush administration, we made a lot of mistakes. And hopefully...
How's Obama then?
Obama better. Obama, of course, absolutely better. But Afghanistan needs a little bit more help economically.
But what you did, you jumped immediately to the issue of women and schooling. And, don't people get a transition period, or do we just say, okay, yesterday you were autocratic, today you're democratic, you're on your own, you voted, hooray, and now you should do everything that we do in our democracy, but maybe it's not desired in the culture by the people.
Democracy is a culture that you have to develop it. Democracy is, you're absolutely right. The democratic institution cannot build overnight. You have to give chance and opportunities to people to bring them together. You can facilitate the process, but you cannot impose the process over people. And especially in countries like, for example, Iraq, like Egypt, like Afghanistan, of course, different level. You have to give them a chance.
All right, we're just about at the bottom of the hour here. News is straight ahead. Let me go ahead and tell you, AccuWeather says this afternoon, breezy with increasing amounts of sun. A high today around 39. Tonight mostly cloudy, lows down to 28. And then for tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday, times of sun and clouds, temperatures in the middle to upper 30s. Right now, 34.
Short court appearance today for surviving Boston Marathon bombing suspect Jaharza Nayev. He appeared in federal court for the first time since July of 2013.
But we are just blowing through our time here today.
It's moving fast.
It is moving fast because we are engrossed in our guest and his insight here, Dr. Mehdi Noorbaksh from Harrisburg University, giving us all the insight that we lack.
We have no. Nice discussion. We have nice discussion.
Different insights.
Different insight.
And
absolutely.
that's what we need is different insights. We get the insights from the news. And the news people don't know dork.
Yes, and the different insight then is this whole idea of reformist Islam. And how can we learn more about that? How is that presenting itself in the Middle East?
It's not only in the Middle East. Muslims who came outside, of course, the Middle East.
Yeah, and certainly.
And other parts of
and that makes sense that you'd have reformist
Yeah.
Muslims there. But what about the Middle East? I mean, how is it that I might support someone who's in Islam but has a progressive viewpoint in the Middle East, or learn about what they're doing? Do they have
In
denominational
every
names or
single country
websites?
believe me, every single country that you go, most of the things that they write, unfortunately, is in Arabic or is in Persian and the others. But I have books. I have books over here in English, translated, of course, over here. I can send you a list of those, those.
What do you
those
think
names.
about Ahmadiyya, the Ahmadiyya movement? I love what they say about women, about education, but then they'll tell me, no, that's not Islamic. That's Jehovah's Witness.
It's in an offshoot, the same as, of course, Christianity. That there
It's
are a lot
progressive
of
ideas.
So very progressive ideas.
So-
and there is no complaint, of course.
Well,
Progressive.
give us what is Ahmadiyya? What is,
Ahmadiyya is established. They're largely based in New York City. There's a community in York, and they read the Quran with the goal of highlighting interpretations that are very progressive, that women are people too and should be educated. They'll talk about jihad as internal peace and
this
not
is exact.
as war.
But overall, this is my problem with any religion, that at its center, of course, in the modern time is a person. I don't want to see that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see
But
that.
you should say that because regrettably, it's true. We live in an area where what the Stalinists used to call cults of personality.
Yeah, I don't want to see that.
Oh, so you're saying that Ahmadiyya is all based around an individual?
One individual.
One individual.
Yeah.
So how can I learn about people who have ideas like Ahmadiyya in the Middle East?
I send you, as I said, I send you.
But what if I'm just listening to the radio right now? Are there community names or websites, or how can we learn?
What English language translation newspapers or sources would be credible to
one
read?
of the references that I have for you, and you see, of course, over there, you see a lot of debates at the moment on Al Jazeera.
Okay.
Believe me, that's a good source. Al Jazeera is not only about, of course, politics. Is about a lot of things. And go to their website. This is, the
Al Jazeera America or just Al Jazeera?
Al Jazeera America, it doesn't, of course, make any difference that much, because you see a lot of opinions, not only political, but you see a lot of things over there. That gives you, of course, a trend. If you go to Europe, for example, there is the Islamic Council of Europe. They are very progressive in that, that part of the, of course, Europe. When you go to California, you have a couple of other groups in California. I send you, of course, I want to see what kind of literature, because I'm working with those groups, but not necessarily on their publication. But as I said, if you go to the Middle East, and especially if your language is Arabic, or for example, in my country, for example, I can give you now 20 names. But of course, their sources are in Persian. But one of the philosophers who came to this country from my country, and he cannot go back, and he is very much highly educated in philosophy, and he is very a specialist in Rumi, is Abdul Karim Soroush. Soroush has a website, and if you go to that website, you see a lot of his work is translated into English, and believe me, that is one of the good sources to see how the reformists think about, for example, religion. One of the arguments that Soroush has.
How do you spell his last name? S-A.
Soroush, Soroush.
Okay.
Yes, and if you send us the link, we can put it on Facebook.
We will do that. I will do that. Believe me. As soon as I go to my office to the Jordan tomorrow, I will do it. Soroush, of course, is one of them. Unfortunately, many of the works of Bazargan has not been translated into English, but I can find some other source. Now that you said website, definitely, I will send you some sources from here and there in English language, because in Persian and Arabic, of course, you can see a lot here and there. But overall, as I said, when you go to the Middle East at the moment and you talk to people, especially the educated people, very much you see the interest in democracy, the interest, of course, in, as I said, go back to the Arab Spring and see what the Egyptian people, of course, wanted, or what the Tunisian, of course, wanted. Because that a couple of years ago we had a Huntington from Harvard University came with the, of course, theory of the clash of civilization. You know what I'm talking about. That Islamic civilization is not compatible to democracy and democratic, of course, norm. A lot of responses, came back. But in my understanding, the biggest response came with the Arab Spring. Arab Spring showed that people are really want to establish democratic norms, accountable government, all of those issues. And in the Middle East, that is the battle now. That is something that you see, of course, everywhere. And in my understanding, Egypt is not a finished story. These guys are.
I hope not.
No, it is not.
Long way to go.
No, it is not. Egypt is not. The seculars, unfortunately, in Egypt made a huge mistake, and they know that is not what they wanted.
So do you think there will be a second Arab Spring in Egypt?
No, not second, but during this process, they don't have any other choice but to democratize, to go through elections that is not military influenced or is not around personalities. They have to build those institutions. This is overall my take about Egypt. I'm not. Some people are very pessimistic about the situation in those countries. I'm not. I go back to your argument that democracy is not something that you can establish it overnight.
Right.
People have to learn the process. In the United States, we have a 300 years history. And look at the polarization in the politics at the moment in this country.
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
And a lot of it is the same polarization between the let's call them the ultra-religious.
That's my point.
And
Absolutely.
and the more secular, progressive religion.
Absolutely.
Same argument repeated. It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
And that's the thing that I found most distressing about the Middle East thing is that it pulled everything to the right. Mm-hmm. It pulled all religion to the right. Everybody felt that they weren't being extreme enough, unless they could, unless they could, have devotees like the Taliban had. Maybe we don't want to really cut off heads, but I wonder what would happen if we put knives in the hands of people and didn't have a police force that enforced religious freedom. It wonders me how that would turn out.
But as I said, many countries of the Middle East have been immune to that type of. You see a fringe in the society. You go to Jordan, for example.
But they make all the noise.
I know.
That's the thing.
And that's a problem.
They get all the headlines.
And that's my point. And we go back to your argument that why the other side doesn't get the headline. Mm-hmm. Because the other side is just in the discourse, in education, in the schools and others. Those are not headlines,
right.
But these guys are headlines.
President George W. Bush said when he was in office that part of his reason for trying to nation build in Iraq and Afghanistan, for that measure, was that he truly believed that all people yearn to be free, and that was his impetus. Because the Iraqis were under the brutal dictatorship of Hussein.
Not from the beginning. The Bush administration invaded Iraq under a different pretext.
Sure.
Yes.
That
was overall, a political type of ideology. And later on, when of course we failed in Iraq in terms, in 2008, the United States is not in a good shape in Iraq. Believe me, it's not. I'm sorry, sooner than that. 2006, the United States is searching for an alternative. And Nouri al-Maliki was a close ally of the United States who came and ruined, of course, the politics of Iraq too. What I want to say later on, when, of course, weapons of mass destruction was not found in Iraq, then the Bush administration offered another, of course, plan for the Middle East. They called Greater Middle East plan to democratize those countries. And many of the Arab countries at that time, which were not consulted about that plan, they got so angry with the Bush administration. And this is not the way. Democracy cannot built by America or Europe in the Middle East. The only thing that can come from the West is encouragement and incentive, because democracy is a culture, is norm that has to be developed, is institutions that have to be developed. And in countries that they lived under years of authoritarian regimes, this is not easy. You cannot build it overnight. Then nation building in that sense doesn't mean anything, because even in Japan, even in Europe, it took many, many years. And as you know, in Japan or in Europe especially, the culture was very close to the United States. That was a Western, of course, culture. It was a Christian, of course, Christian countries. In Japan, of course, was different, but the situation was also ready for it. But in the Middle East, especially in that, part of the world, because of the years of authoritarianism, the culture that has to be developed for democratic norms, you have to give it a chance. You cannot impose it. You have to give incentive to people. You have to encourage them. This is overall, my point. And the countries that are given that chance, like for example Turkey, like Tunisia that I gave you the example, they know how to run it. They know how to do it.
Well, Rabbi Zivik always says, democracy doesn't always have to be in the American model.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. And he's absolutely right in that sense, too, that in this democracy also we have a lot of shortcomings. Yes?
But then when America did pull out of Iraq, all hell broke loose.
I know, because we didn't know that we should have not invaded Iraq. When you invade a country that is tribal, a country that has a lot of problem, and you go to that country and you don't know how to handle it, then you make a lot of problem.
That's what I keep saying. It. People should just spend a day in a marketplace in an Arab country, in a Muslim country, and you will get a different notion of what democracy may mean, because democracy doesn't mean paying the price that's on the item. Democracy means arguing about it.
Yeah, negotiating. You're absolutely right.
Haggle.
Yeah,
but it's different. But I'm saying, so you know from the beginning, it's a different culture. That things take more time. That you're going to have a glass of tea. That you're going to have to, do a whole thing number. They're going to say this is the best product. You're going to say you saw 10 of them on the way to their store. And it's
and it in Latin America is a Christian, of course, part of the world, but the culture is different. It's not, you cannot overnight, of course, build democracy. Brazil, for example, Brazil is one of the best examples in that regard, that after years of dictatorship and so on, groups came, of course, to power. They built, the economy, and little by little, of course, democratic institutions.
So what does you say America should not try to foist their brand of democracy on anybody else?
Absolutely.
We should encourage.
So
So what does that mean? What is the encouragement then?
Encouragement means that you should show to the Saudi Arabia or some other countries that you do not favor their type of regime. Is not what Americans cherish. Your relationship with Saudi Arabia in the past was totally something else. For the future, this is my point, that if Saudis want to have, of course, a better relationship with the United States, they have to take into consideration some other elements too. Economic relations with the United States, that was, of course, the norm in the past, should not be the norm for the future, because, believe me, the interest of the United States is in the stability of the Middle East, because of the market, because of so many other things. And stability is only achievable now through transformation and change of the authoritarian regimes in that that part of the world. And I'm not saying overnight. I'm not saying overnight. I'm saying you have to tell the Saudis that you have to recognize the right of the minorities. You have to recognize the right of the women in that country. You have to recognize the right of education for everybody in that country, because that brings stability to the region, and that is in your interest.
Well, so the Saudi king and his government says, in no uncertain terms, screw you, we're going to do what we want to do in our country. Then what do we do?
Then in that global world, they know that globalization is the norm to go, and countries that are very much have that answer, they will be isolated in that global world. Because globalization...
So we embargo
globalization, no, not only that. Globalization means, of course, economic relations, access to financial resources, access to financial institutions, access to a lot of other things. Yes? And when a country is not following the cherished norms of the world, that country should pay for it. This is overall, my take. And little by little, I'm not, saying that from tomorrow you boycott, Saudi Arabia. What I'm saying is that when the norms becomes, democracy, and in various ways and various, of course, levels, and that become a component of the globalization with all of the benefits that globalization has for all of us, those countries that they cannot or they don't want to follow, of course, those norms, definitely they should not take advantage of a lot of course, institutions and the benefits that the globalization brings, of course, today to the table.
All right. We'll wrap things up with our December edition of You and Your Faith right after these words.
This is Steve Lum of Kramer & Lum Funeral Home. Personalizing your funeral has never been easier. Whatever people remember you by, whether it's an apron, a special chair, even your motorcycle, if it fits through our doors, it can be part of the service. Kramer & Lum Funeral Home and Crematory, Route 72 in Jonestown.
Kramer and Lum Funeral Home and Crematory. We're here because we care.
The holidays are just around the corner, and you can begin preparing your wish list now because Santa Claus will be visiting the Lebanon Valley Mall. Beginning Saturday, November 22nd, Jolly Old St. Nick will be located in Lower Court near Five Stone Kids to find out who's been naughty and who's been nice in the Lebanon Valley. For more information on Santa's schedule and extended mall hours, visit LebanonValleyMall.com. Wing and Roth Pipe Shop, 706 Cumberland Street, downtown Lebanon, is the place for the pipe or cigar aficionado on your Christmas list. They have nearly 300 blends of pipe tobaccos, including the newest from McClellan and Cornell & Deal. Just in time for the holidays are new pipes from Radice, Luciano, Brebbia, Peterson, Bonfioli, and Hackert. Stop in and check out some great holiday sales, including humidors and cigar gift and variety packs in their generous walk-in humidor room. That's Wing and Roth Pipe Shop, 706 Cumberland Street in downtown Lebanon.
AccuWeather one final time after this.
Season's greetings from Wayne and the staff at Rudy's Locksmith. Best wishes to their customers, friends, and associates for a happy, safe, and secure New Year. Rudy's Locksmith is your full-service locksmith. Their techs can service locks from the 1800s to today's computerized technology, at home, at your business, or for your car. Happy holidays to you and yours from everyone at Rudy's Locksmith, 544 South 9th Street, Lebanon, 272-7422.
AccuWeather's exclusive Lebanon area forecast. Breezy with intervals of clouds and sunshine this afternoon, the high 39. Mainly cloudy tonight, down to 28. Tomorrow and Saturday, times of sunshine and clouds. High tomorrow, 38. Saturday's high 37. Partly sunny Sunday, up near 40. Reporting for WLBR, this is AccuWeather's John Feerick.
Cloudy skies. Well, we're up to 34 degrees here at 1270 WLBR. Just a couple of moments left with Dr. Noorbaksh and our panel here for You and Your Faith.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Absolutely.
Fascinating, Captain.
Goodness.
All right, you've got 1 minute.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Maybe a minute and a half.
Okay.
To explain the most misunderstood concept in the West, jihad.
Yes. Jihad overall in Islam means somebody attempts to purify itself. Is exactly the direct saying from Muhammad that the biggest jihad is the purification of yourself. In terms of violence, in Islam at least, the doctrine of what is, of course, justified. I haven't seen, and through the literature of the reformists, all wars are defensive. They are not offensive. And of course, we go back to that question at who interpret, of course, what is defensive and
Right.
what is not, offensive.
Right.
But many argue that what, of course, ISIS is doing, the majority, is totally out of proportion. Of course, it's a terrorist organization, but in terms of even going to the doctrine, of course, the slavery is something else. The brutality that they have done is something else. But even to the simplest thing, these guys are totally off. Jihad does not mean that kind of, as I said, attitude and that kind of
Well, the Western
brutal whips. Yeah.
Yeah, the Western definition is holy war.
Holy war. No. In Islam, as I said, all wars are defensive war, and I cannot decide what war is defensive or not. And overall, jihad means self-purification. This is the highest jihad that anybody, of course, can do, and that is a true meaning. Jihad is coming from trying. In Arabic, jahada means trying to purify yourself. In terms of that brutality and the violence that these guys, of course, they try. Totally, there is nothing there.
So for those critics that say Islam is not a peaceful religion, it's not a good religion, it's not a valid religion.
This is overall, my point. That, believe me, Muslims have a tradition of respecting Judaism and Christianity. And they have never thought that way, that they are separate from those great faiths. This is overall, what it is. Okay. For us as a Muslim, Jesus has the same respect. Moses has the same respect that Muhammad has, because these are the prophets with Noah and Abraham that are coming with the 5 prophets with a universal mission. And this is, of course, binding for all of us to respect all of them. This is overall what it is.
Dr. Noorbaksh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm coming to Harrisburg University to take one of your classes. We appreciate it.
Good, and we're back on January 7th.
Yes.
Rob Lush will be here. He's an expert in Pennsylvania powwow, and he is a national leader of heathenry.
All right.